Welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast.
We have allowed ourselves to become so disconnected and ignorant about something that is as intimate as the food that we eat.
Be prepared to grow your own for victory.
God said, I need somebody strong enough to clear trees and heave bales, yet gentle enough to yean lambs and wean pigs and tend the pink-combed pullets who will stop his mower for an hour to splint the broken leg of a meadowlark. So God made a farmer.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast. I'm your host, Harold Thornbrough, and this is episode 137, April 19th, 2020, and glad you're joining me today. And I've got a great one for you today. I'm going to be joined by Brian Wells. Now, Brian is the host of the Homestead Journey Podcast, so he's no stranger to podcasting, but he just has a lot to offer. And he started a few months ago podcasting, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the interview. But before we jump into that, as usual, I like to talk about a little bit of the things going on around here. And it's been pretty strange for me because I've been off of work due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and I've been off for over a month now, and look like I got probably about 3 more weeks before I go back to work. So, yeah, lots of time on my hands. And during that time, I kind of had to move some fence over on my property to kind of make some room for some more beds. I built 5 new raised beds on my property. And, I'm just trying to get ahead on some podcast episodes. I recorded a couple this week and got a couple more of interviews I have to do. And I've just been catching up on a lot of home maintenance, all while being really frugal because of the lack of income right now. I was able to draw unemployment, but it's just a portion of what you make, and still waiting on. Everybody's getting their stimulus checks, but I didn't get mine, and for whatever reason, I didn't get one and all that kind of stuff. And, that's fine. I didn't put my hopes and prayers in that. I really didn't. And who knows if I'll get one later date. I probably will, but, it isn't really helping right now. So, I thought, well, this is a good time. Just do a lot of things. I just got to be kind of frugal about it, as we should be anyway, and do a lot of things. So it's really given me an opportunity to do some stuff online, do some stuff on the property, and just kind of get caught up on some things. So that's been kind of fun. I did put together a Patreon page. Many of you know, and many of you were part of the membership I used to have, and I just didn't want to go down that path again as we've kind of rebooted this podcast and kind of came back full blown again. But I did want to have a way to pay for things and to kind of keep the thing going and support it, and I'm going to do that through a Patreon page. If you don't know what Patreon is, I actually wrote a post about it on my website at haroldthornbrough.com. You can go check that out, and it's just a way for people to support their favorite content creators. If you like what they're doing, you can support them with a minimal amount of money per month, and it gives us an opportunity as content creators to give something back. So, for example, for me, I'll be doing bonus episodes in there, so there'll be some episodes that you'll get in there that nobody else will get. Also, you'll get all that in one podcast feed. You'll get the public and the private podcast all in the same feed, because you get your own private feed when you become a member of the Patreon page, and you get that RSS feed that you can plug into your favorite player, and it'll automatically update with both the public episodes and the private episodes, and that'll be your own private feed. Also, I'm giving anybody who signs up to be a patron, is what they would call it, they're a member of that page, to support this podcast, also gets a free PDF copy of my book, From Home to Small Town Homestead. And it's just a book that I wrote a while back about what led me into this journey, and just how you could kind of follow the same path if you live in a place that isn't ideal for homesteading, say an urban lot or a suburban lot. And there's things in there that would still apply if you live on a larger space as well. But it's really just about helping people get started right where they are right now. So it's a good little book for that, and you get a free PDF copy of that for joining. And also there's discounts in there for other suppliers for homestead products, and there'll just be other posts in there that will only be there. There'll be you'll probably see pictures and a few videos and and things like that you'll also get on that page that you won't see anywhere else. So that's kind of what it's all about. It's just a way for me to kind of keep this thing going and providing a little something extra for other people. And at the same time, being able to, make the most of this and really make it something big again. This thing took quite a hit when I shut it down for a few months there. And many of you know that story. We won't rehash that. You can go back and listen to past episodes about that. But, I want to bring it back strong. I think a lot of people really wanted this podcast, and I enjoy doing it. I love it. But, this is a way to kind of build something out of it beyond, just every week podcast or every couple week podcast. So I'd kind of like to bring it back strong. I really wasn't going to at first, but, I've had a lot of time on my hands, and I thought, what a great opportunity to just really build this thing up and go full blast with it again. So all that aside, let's just jump right into our interview with Brian Wells from the Homestead Journey Podcast. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. Well, today I got Brian from the Homestead Journey Podcast on with me. Brian, welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast.
Thank you. It is an absolute pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm really glad to have you on. I mean, I've been listening to your podcast for just a little while now. I've probably only been maybe listening to it. I think I found it maybe about 3 months ago and started listening to it, and have really been enjoying all the stuff you got going on. And you're just real consistent about putting out episodes. And it sounds like you got quite a little homestead there. So I'd kind of like to hear a little bit more about all the things you're doing there. So could you just maybe take a couple minutes and let the listeners know a little bit about you and maybe a little bit about your homestead?
Sure. We live on a little over 2 acres, and as I refer to it on just about every episode, I think my last episode I missed it, but I always refer to it as beautiful upstate New York.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely beautiful here. I love this area. We are just north of Albany, New York, and right on the Vermont border, and it's a very agricultural area. I think our county has more cows than it has people. As it should be, right? Exactly. Absolutely. And we've been on this piece of property now for, we bought it in 2008. So what's that, going on 12 years now? Mm-hmm. And, it's one of those situations where we moved back to this area to be close to my grandfather, and he was, up in years, starting to have some health problems, and we moved back to this area with the idea that we would spend 6 months with him, and then we would buy a house and kind of be close enough, but yet far enough away. And we ended up spending 18 months with him, which ended up being really a great thing for us, because that's really where I discovered that I had a love for doing these kinds of things. And so we purchased this property, which we could see my grandfather's house from the end of the driveway. But it was kind of one of those situations when we bought it. It's not like we had this grand scheme of homesteading, because at that point I didn't even connect homesteading with what we were doing. To me, this was just the way we lived life, because I really grew up in this. Yeah. So anyhow, we've been here again for a little over 12 years, a little over 2 acres. And now we have, we're doing American Guinea Hogs, chickens, ducks, geese, turkeys, meat rabbits. Trying to think what else. We've got gardens. So we've really jumped into it, and it's really grown. Really, though, I think
sounds like it. Yeah.
What really got us going was when we bought the American Guinea Hogs in 2017. That's really where I discovered a name for what we're doing. That was the first time I associated with the way we lived life with the term homesteading. And now, go ahead.
You keep saying we. Are you married and have kids and you got a family there? Or?
Yeah, it's my wife, and we have a 15-year-old son. And he's somebody he loves the chickens. The chickens are his jam. It's something that he really, when he was, I think, about 5 or 6, we were still keeping the chickens out at my grandfather's house. And my wife and I were down there working in the garden. My grandfather had a beautiful area. It was about 1/4 of an acre size garden that we had access to grow in up until about 2013. And so we were down there working in the garden, and my son disappeared. And we went looking for him and found him in the chicken coop, and he was talking to the chickens, and just fell in love with them. And that's just really been his thing ever since. And he shows chickens every year at the fair, and has won numerous awards showing chickens. So that's his thing. The rest of it he tolerates. He'll help me if I ask him, but the chickens he absolutely loves.
Now, how many acres are you on?
It's a little over 2 acres, so it's like 2.16, I think. Yeah. But I think about a little over an acre of it is wooded. And
oh wow, great! Yeah.
It's great. Yes and no, great, because where we live at, it used to be a limestone quarry, and we live on a place called Bald Mountain, and the reason why is because they cut the top of the mountain off and produced lime here 100 years ago, and I'm convinced they took all of the junk rock and dumped it on this property. And so that's what's in our woods is all kinds of shale, and I have my pigs down in there now, and trying to fence that off was an absolute nightmare. One thing that's for sure, I didn't need to go to the gym for a long time. Trying to pound T-post into shale is a workout.
Yeah, it definitely is. So you make the use of the woods. I mean, you're able to forage in there. I mean, you probably use it for some things like that, right?
I keep pigs in there.
The pigs running. Okay, yeah.
So we do woodlot raised pork here with the American Guinea Hogs, and I still have, I would say, probably another half acre that I could and that I would like to turn into more area for the pigs to forage, but it's just always that whole time and money thing. There's never enough of both.
How many pigs are you running in there?
Right now, and I've learned that pig math can almost be like bunny math. We've had our boar break through. Well, I can't blame it all on him. We've had the girls break through in with him too, and ended up with a few litters. And at one point, we had almost 30 pigs.
Oh, wow.
But we don't have that many now. Got a more manageable.
Yeah, is there enough forage in there to support that many pigs, or is it they tear it up pretty good?
Oh, if I had that many pigs in there on a permanent basis, they would have it tore up.
Yeah, that's what I figured. That sounds like a lot for that
definitely,
size area.
Yeah, definitely not optimal at all. Right now, what I have is I think about 12. I have to go through and count. I've sold a few off here recently, so I keep on hand 2 sows and a boar on purpose, and then anything else I'm either growing out as feeders or I sell whole and half hog shares to friends and family and basically anybody that wants it. So we turn them over pretty good. We've not ended up with a whole lot of anything left over. We've been able to move.
So you said you got into the pigs in what, 2017, you said?
Yeah, 2017 is when, I bought it was supposed to be the boar and 2 sows. And the sows had each had a litter, and the guy that I was buying them from thought that he had all the piglets sold. And then that all fell through, and he needed to move the pigs quick. And so instead of coming home with 3 pigs, I came home with 14.
Whoa.
I went from no pigs to 14 pigs.
So talk to me about that learning experience.
Yeah.
That had to be quite a change in your lifestyle.
Absolutely. And it's something, honestly, I absolutely love the American Guinea Hog. It's something that I wanted to get into pigs for a while, but I also didn't want an animal here that I had to be afraid of, that I was going to be worried about having my wife and son be around. And so when I read about the American Guinea Hog, I think it was in Grit magazine, I found a breeder that happened to be here in our town, which was kind of odd because the American Guinea Hog is still a relatively rare breed. And so anyhow, when I went down, she invited me down to her farm. I saw the pigs and I just absolutely fell in love. And so we brought them here, but definitely going from having raised chickens, which are fairly easy to kind of herd around and manage and keep where you want them, going to a larger animal like that definitely was quite a bit of a learning curve. And it's something that we're still learning to this day.
Yeah, I would imagine.
We've had good luck keeping them within the perimeter fence. I've had some bad luck, as I said, with the boar going over with the gilts and the gilts coming over with the boar. And it's taken me a little bit to learn those lessons, that maybe I should reinforce that fence line because hot wire doesn't always stay hot. So in fact, this past weekend, I put another piece of hog panel in between them just to kind of reinforce that. So that, learning how to keep a hot wire hot has been something that I've had to, learn a little bit the hard way.
Yeah.
Walking the fence line. I need to do that more frequently than I do, because they'll get to rooting around as pigs do. And the next thing you know, they've got a log pushed up against it and it's shorting everything out and nothing's hot.
Smart animals, aren't they?
Yeah. So that's been a bit of a challenge. And then the other piece to it as well is understanding, how to get them trained to a bucket so that if they do get out, or if you want to move them from, paddock to paddock, you can do it without, or you need to load them onto a trailer. Those are things that you need to learn how to work with nature and not against it, because those, with a chicken, if it doesn't go where you want it to, eventually you can catch it if you've got enough patience and you can put it where you want it. Not doing that with a pig, especially not a full-grown boar or a full-grown sow. If they don't want to go, they're not going.
Yeah, like a lot your size, but in the woods, and probably be a lot of fun trying to herd one of them things if you don't have them trained to come to you.
Yeah, so that's one of those things where I remember we went to pick the pigs up, and I was used to, with chickens, you get wide, you kind of flap your arms and you can kind of get them going the way you want them to go. It took me less than 5 minutes to figure out that with pigs, you don't move pigs that way.
No. They if they got in their mind that they're going to do one thing and you want them to do something different, good luck. I know that. We had them. I grew up with them, and I tell you, you just couldn't. It was hard to make them do something. That's for sure.
Yep. Now, a big part of the reason why we love the American Guinea Hog breed is because their temperament is a lot more docile. They're a lot more of a manageable, easygoing pig. Mm-hmm. And that's a big part of the reason why I was drawn to the breed in the first place. And so once you understand, again, how to work with them and not against them, and you get them thinking that, hey, this is what I want to do because I want to follow that bucket of feed because I know it's going to be tasty, then you pretty much can get them to follow you anywhere. And a couple of weeks ago, my wife and I and our son, we were out at the local ski area, and I happened to be on the lift, and I pulled my phone out, and I saw a text from a friend of ours that had stopped by to drop something off, and they said, hey, you've got a pig out. And that was the first time we'd ever had a pig get outside our perimeter fence. And so we left the ski area, came home as quickly as we could, and there this sow was underneath the carport, and she had gotten into a bag of trash. And she's going through it, and so I ran over, I grabbed the bucket, and I put some spent grain in it that I get from a local brewery sometimes. And, she took one sniff of that, and I literally was sprinting across the lawn with her behind me, running as fast as she could, and bam, she was right back into her paddock, and everything was good. And I fixed the fence, and we've been happy since then. But the thing that was very scary about that, I didn't realize it till afterwards. My wife had cleaned out underneath the sink, and she had found an old box of rat poison, and that box happened to be in that bag of trash. And thankfully, the sow didn't get that far into it, but if I hadn't had her trained to a bucket, she would have just said whatever and kept, because she liked whatever was in the trash.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so that would have potentially been a very, very tough lesson to learn.
Yeah, for sure. Now you, so not just handling pigs, but now you said you're doing something even, you went kind of a step beyond. You're not like just raising them for your own meat. You're selling some too, right? You said you sold a bunch earlier?
Yeah. So we sell them as, I'll sell them to people that want to raise pigs out for meat. So as feeder pigs.
Okay. So you're not getting them processed and selling the meat. You're selling the whole pig.
Right.
Live. Yeah. Okay.
Correct. So, I've done a number of different ways. In part, what I've been trying to do is figure out what my market is in this area. because we do live in a relatively rural area. And, everybody, when they think New York, they think New York City.
Yeah.
We're not New York City. And so, the people in this area are, relatively speaking, more blue collar type people. They're not people that can afford, $12 and $13 a pound pork. So trying to, figure out what my market is from the standpoint of, do I just sell meat? Do I sell the feeders? And also keeping in mind that the American Guinea Hog is a rare breed that still is in a recovery phase. I've been also selling registered stock for breeding purposes to help the breed recover. So it's kind of been a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But up to this point, I have tried to stay away from selling cuts of pork. It's whole pigs, half pigs, or for people to raise themselves.
Yeah. It's a whole nother area of regulation that you have to deal with. I'm sure when you take it to that level, it's probably just a lot easier to move a whole live hog.
Absolutely. I mean, when you get into selling by the cut, now at that point you have to use a USDA processor. And
right.
I am very blessed that in my area, within less than an hour's drive, I have rated about an hour. I have 3 USDA processors. There are some people that have to drive hours to get to a USDA processor. I have one that's less than 10 miles from my house. So I'm very blessed in that regard. But on the other hand, some of them are booked 6 months, 8 months in advance.
Wow.
So it's tough. It's tough to be able to do that. Now, the American Guinea Hog, because it is a slower growing breed, I know pretty much when I'm going to take them to be processed, and I could schedule that if I wanted to. But then on the other side of that, you also have the labor that you incur if you're going to go to a farmer's market and sit around to try to sell meat, or are you going to schedule pickup times on the farm for people to come and buy meat? Like, how are you going to work that out? Right. I just don't really want to do that.
Now, you're raising a lot of other animals. You said you got, of course, chickens, and you said rabbits. What else did you say? I mean, was that all the animals you were raising, or did you have more than that?
We have geese. We have ducks.
Geese? Okay.
And we have meat birds, meat chickens.
Okay, so you got both kinds going. Now, are all those for your own private meat, or are you selling any of that product at all? So
I am selling. I sell a few meat chickens periodically. It's one of those things, again, where I've tried to offer them for sale to people, and I haven't had a whole lot of takers. And part of it is just because, people don't realize there's a real cost for raising real food. They get used to the supermarket prices, and then when you say, hey, I've got this great chicken, but it's going to cost you, 3 times as much as what it would cost you in the store, that's a tough sell for many people, especially in this kind of a climate right now.
I hear a lot of folks, talking about how, you can, they'll sell whatever their product is for a real high price, and they can't keep it, in stock because they sell it out so fast and whatnot. But I just don't think everybody realizes it's not like that everywhere. I mean, there's just places in this country where people don't have a lot of extra money to buy food, and they don't go that extra level. In general, most of the people just won't, they won't spend that extra money for their food to get a higher quality food. They'll just settle. They'll settle for what's available in the stores. And in a lot of places, it's actually like that, where it's just hard to create that market, And
I think that's one of the situations. And it's something that I get, though. I understand why.
I do too.
You roll into the grocery store and you've got $20. I get it. I get why people, it's a hard sell for some people. Yeah. It's just you've only got so many dollars, and you got to make them stretch.
Absolutely, yeah. And then there's, like I said, there's some places where people don't even give it a second thought to spend a lot of money on their food, a high quality food. I mean, it just depends on the area and the kind of the kind of jobs that are in an area, it's not even just the jobs, it's just the mentality of the people in an area. I mean, they kind of flock together, don't they? I mean, you just have places like that where people just think differently about their food and the quality of it.
Absolutely. And I do think, if I were to go to the next town over, I hate to call it the next town over, but it's a little farther than that. But it's definitely a wealthier, kind of more well-to-do area. If I wanted to go over there and try to build a market to sell meat and so forth over there, I probably could. But I work a full-time off-farm job, and I'm involved in a lot of other stuff. I honestly don't have time to go try to do that. And, you can try to use the power of the internet, but even that, I mean, you see what's happening on Facebook where they shut down animal groups, and a lot of the, even the Facebook marketplace sites have banned even the sale of meat. So a lot of that just becomes, it's just very difficult to do.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. I mean, I still see, eggs being put out there and things like that. People still buying those in a lot of places. But again, I see some places where eggs sell for $5-6 a dozen, and around where I live, I mean, people sell them for $2 or $3 a dozen. I mean, it's just, for free range eggs right off the farm. I mean, it's just some places go higher than they do in other places. Yeah,
we sell our eggs here. And I usually have a stand out at the end of the road and have an honor system. And up until last year, and I think last year was my third or maybe even my fourth full season, putting the eggs out by the side of the road. Until last year, I don't think I'd ever had a dozen eggs go missing. I never had anybody try to monkey with the money box. And there were times when somebody might say, hey, I'm $1 short. And they might leave me $2, and then the next time they'd leave me $4 because I sell them for $3 a dozen. I didn't have any issue. Towards the end of last season, we had somebody break into the money box, and they just did a whole bunch of. It was nonsensical. They actually stole one of the ice packs that I put in there. Now I have 2 ice packs in there. They stole one. They left the other. It was the most bizarre thing. So I ended up posting on the one of the local Facebook sites for our town, and I just said, hey folks, if you know who did this, tell them they don't need to bust into my egg box. If they need food, if they need money, come down the driveway, we'll take care of them. And it was funny the response that I got from people from this. I was out fixing the egg box the next day. And I had somebody stop by and hand me a $20 bill. And
people are, I tell you what, and you hear a lot of bad things happen here and there in the world. But I'll tell you, when push comes to shove, good people come out of the woodwork and will help you out and make up for all the bad. They really do. I've seen it so many times. You're saying this. I know you've seen it. I mean, it's just, you hear the stories over and over and over, don't you?
It's amazing. And, it was just, I had people say, hey, I'll come buy eggs from you. And we had started selling vegetables last year for my son, actually. The proceeds for that were going to help him with his Boy Scout adventures to fund some of the things that he's wanting to do. And and people were like, we can't have that happen to a scout. We got to come support you. And so in the long run, I think we ended up doing better as a result. And that wasn't my intent with regard.
So don't you wish they'd have broke into it a couple of years earlier? I mean, you can make all kinds of extra money. No, that's horrible. But it's true. It is something, something really good came out of something kind of bad.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where, again, like you said, the good people came out and, the community just supported us in a way that was, it was special.
Yeah, that's good. That's great, man. I love hearing those kind of stories because it's just inspiring and it's encouraging to know that, because again, it's so easy to see the bad, everywhere you go, you just see this and you watch the news and you hear it and it gets exhausting. And you need these kind of stories. You need to hear about the people that say, no, we're not going to let that happen. We're going to make up for it, and they do. They do all the time.
And I had people tell me, oh, now you're going to have to put game cameras out there and you've got to put video cameras out there. And I said, okay, I've done this for, I think it was at least 3 full seasons. It might have been my 4th. I don't remember. But one person, one knucklehead, and then I had people tell me, oh, you just got to stop doing it. Why would I stop doing that because of one knucklehead?
More than likely, if somebody thought, because, usually if somebody did do that, they'd probably never go back because they would be thinking you probably set up some kind of security from there on out, so they'd probably never try it again anyway.
Exactly. Well, at the end of the day, we're charging $3 a dozen for eggs. We're not getting rich off of that. Trust me, we're not even breaking even $3 a dozen.
Yeah. Paying for the feed pretty much, huh?
Yeah, and then you stop and you think about when in the wintertime, although we cycle our flock out every year, so our chickens never really stop laying. But in the wintertime, when things kind of dip, and at that point, I can't keep an egg box at the end of the road because it's going to freeze on me. So, it becomes a little bit more difficult to sell the eggs. So in the grand scheme of things, when I look at the cost of buying the chicks and the, and the feed and the first 5 or 6 months when they're not laying and you're just putting feed into them, at $3 a dozen, we're not even coming close to covering our costs. But it's never been about that. For me, it's about providing good food to my community, and it's about providing to a certain extent, a service. And we're never going to eat all of those eggs. They would just go bad. I could toss them to the pigs. They're good for pigs. But to me, that's a bit of I don't want to say it's a waste because you're turning eggs into bacon, and we all love bacon. But, again, for me, it's never been about the money. And so why in the world would I put a bunch of video cameras out there to protect $3 eggs? I mean, can you imagine the number of eggs I'd have to sell to pay for those video cameras?
Yeah, exactly. Wouldn't be worth selling them, but it barely is anyway, really. But like you said, it's service to the community and puts good food on your table, and you get the opportunity to put some good food on other people's table as well.
Exactly, and for me, that's a big part of why. I mean, we raise and grow as much of our own food as possible, not because I feel like I'm saving myself a whole lot of money. I could go down to the local grocery store and buy a lot of commercially raised food for what we put in, and then you factor in our time on top of it. And, when you compare it against that, it doesn't even come close to making sense financially. Right. On the other hand, though, I know what's not in my food. And to me, that you can't put a price tag on that. And so
I agree.
When I can grow a little extra and sell it to people at a fair price, again, I can't do it for free. I wish I could, but when I can sell it to people at a fair price and offer them good food that doesn't have all of the chemicals and the garbage in it, I feel good about that. I feel like I'm healthier.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are selling some not just eggs, you're selling some vegetables at the stand too, or are you selling them at a farmer's market, or how are you doing that?
We do it we have a roadside stand. Again, last year was our first year doing that, and so it was a bit of a trial and error, what would sell, what wouldn't. But yeah, so we just sold everything at that roadside stand, put vegetables out, eggs we would put out there. The only thing that we don't put out there to sell would be our meat.
Yeah, right. How large of a garden do you have?
So I've done I'm somebody who I rarely garden the same way 2 years in a row. Oh, it's like I can do it better. What if I tried this? Let me try that. So when we moved up,
me too. I experiment every year. I'm trying new things and experimenting with this and that. Yeah.
Part of it is I get bored with just doing things the same old way, but part of it is like, how can I do it better? How can I maximize the yield? I just love trying different things. But when we first moved to this property, again, because there's so much shale, so much rock, I looked at the ground and I said, there's no way we're going to be able to do the traditional, and I use huge air quotes here, method of in-ground gardening, like we had done for years at my grandfather's. And so I started out with some raised beds, and I discovered Mel Bartholomew's Square Foot Gardening book. And so I used that methodology predominantly, and still predominantly use that methodology in my raised beds. Up until, let's see, we started out with 4x8s, and I think a couple of 4x4 beds. And then once I kind of discovered this whole world of homesteading, then I was like, okay, I got to add more. So we added 4 more raised beds 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and I added 4 more last year. And I revamped my beds so that I had 2 4x12 beds in the middle. So I think I have a total of 9 raised beds. And then this year, I just put in place, I'm experimenting with the root stout gardening method. So,
yep. Why don't you take a minute, explain that to the listeners what that is. I mean, I just imagine there's a few people who don't know what that is.
Root stout gardening. So root stout gardening is a deep mulch method that predominantly uses hay as the deep mulch. It's very similar to kind of the Back to Eden style of gardening, except Back to Eden uses the wood chips. And,
right.
So with her, Ruth Stout was a very quirky lady. If you ever read her books,
she considered it lazy gardening, just getting out there and just throwing things out there and seeing what happened.
Exactly, absolutely, and yet she's had great success with it. So for me, I obviously like the idea of lazy gardening because who wouldn't? But right. I want to try something different, and so I had this area where I thought I could do a garden there. But initially I thought about doing the Back to Eden method, except that in our area, I've had a hard time sourcing wood chips. And
it's getting harder because so many people are using that method now that it just seems like everybody wants wood chips. So it's harder to get them from electric companies and county highway departments and, tree trimming companies and stuff because everybody's begging for them.
Exactly. Yeah. And now in our town, I do have access. Well, I could have had access to them a little bit more than perhaps other areas might, except that I would have to go there and shovel them in and shovel them out. And right. I'm in my mid-40s now. I'm not as keen on doing those kinds of things as I would have maybe 20 years ago. So
I hear you. I'm with you.
In fact, I cleaned out the pig pen, one of my pig pens yesterday, and thankfully I got my tractor to do it. And even still, my back was killing me. So I just
so the Ruth Stout method is definitely appealing to you because she's like 70s and she was doing that.
Exactly, absolutely. So I have a friend that sells hay, and I've been buying hay for my pigs off of him, and he had a bunch of mulch hay that he was willing to let me have, and so I said, all right, that sounds like something for me to experiment with, and so that's our big experiment this year. Is using the Ruth Stout method. I prepped the bed last fall, and so what I did there is it was kind of through the summer into the fall last year. We had chickens on it, we had ducks on it, we had turkeys on it, and to really work that area over. And then I spread out some of our homemade compost over the area and put down hay, probably a layer of 8 or 10 inches deep of hay, and then let it set all winter long. And so now this spring, I've gone ahead and already planted some potatoes there, and I've also planted some peas, English peas, on the fence line to use basically the fence as my trellis, which it's a bit of an experiment. Again, this whole thing is an experiment for me because I'm trying to figure out, okay, if I grow these peas up the trellis, is that going to call in the deer? So is it counterproductive for me to do this? Who knows? We'll find out. But
like you said, everything's an experiment. You don't know until you try.
Exactly. And so then what I'm also doing in there as well is experimenting with growing some tomatoes, some peppers. Some of the things that I grow in my square foot garden beds, I'm also putting into this bed to see how they do, and to see, and to be fair, they generally say, your first year of any style of gardening may not be the best. A lot of times it takes a couple of years of building the soil and all of those kinds of things to really see the payback on a particular methodology, unless you're going to a raised bed where you're putting in place.
Right. Starting off with what you want.
Exactly. So I'm keeping that in the back of my mind, because I do want to give it a fair shot. Well, again, for me, it's also a matter of saying, okay, can I grow tomatoes over here, or does it not make sense to grow tomatoes here? Do beans do well here? Do they not?
I have a feeling it'll work out great for you. I mean, it sounds like you put the effort into starting a few months early, letting it set over the winter. Sounds like I would bet that it's going to be pretty successful for you.
We'll see. Again, for me, it's an experiment. It's something fun. I'm not banking on having a huge harvest from this, from the standpoint of, oh my goodness, we're going to go hungry if this ground doesn't produce. I'm banking on my square foot gardens producing, and again, if they don't, are we going to go hungry? Probably not. But in this, era of uncertainty, I kind of feel like, I don't know if you've ever read the Little House on the Prairie series, but in the book, The Long Winter, when Laura and Pa discover that muskrat house. And I don't know if you remember that particular part of the story. And the walls were built very thick. And Pa said something along the lines of, they see something bad coming and they need to prepare for it, or they feel like they need to prepare for it. And then they went into the whole long winter thing. And I don't know, just in this whole coronavirus thing, I kind of feel like those muskrats.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are feeling like that right now because we're hearing lots of stories of people can't keep seeds on the shelves, and people are really the homesteading sites and things. I'll tell you, in the Homestead Front Porch Facebook group that you're a part of, that we're in there, that thing has increased by a couple thousand members in the last just recent weeks. I mean, it's just amazing how fast that's grown, because I think there's just such an increased interest in it because people are, thinking, we better grow some food. I think there's a lot of that going around right now.
And to me, it's up to this point. I don't want to say I've played at it, because I've taken it serious. And I've always tried to, again, my goal was to try to maximize production and how can I do it better and all of those kinds of things. But in the back of my mind, it was like, if it doesn't produce, I'll go to the grocery store and buy some. I'll go to the farmer's market and buy some. I'm not going to go hungry.
It's nice to have that option.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's kind of like, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but on the other hand, I'm like, am I going to need this to survive? Is this going to be the difference between going hungry or having something to eat?
Anybody that knows me knows I don't really overreact to a crisis and things like that. And I don't get too carried away or live in a fear of not having enough to eat. But, I put in 5 more raised beds this year just because I'm like, you know what? I think we need to be growing a little bit more food. It's just the way I was thinking too.
And the thing is if at the end of the day this blows over and I end up with extra food, then great. That's food that I can either sell or give away or share. We can can it, we can dehydrate it, we can ferment it. There's a ton of stuff we can do with it. I mean, worst case scenario, I give it to my pigs and I turn it into pork.
Exactly. It's a good problem to have, having too much of anything like that. Yeah.
I mean, I can feed my chickens. So I don't feel like by adding the roost out bed and trying to again work on making sure that I intensively plant the ground. That I'm going to somehow come out on the short end of a stick.
Sure.
There are some places right now. I was reading an article today where some of the major producers, the more big ag guys, they're plowing crops under the ground because they've lost the contracts to restaurants and schools and all of those. I'm a small guy. I don't have to worry about that. That's not something that where I look at it and I say, oh my goodness, I'm going to overproduce. And now, there's going to be some kind of a crisis because I did that.
Yeah. The biggest crisis that'll probably come out for the average person who is even growing their own food is it's going to have an effect on prices probably on down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With all that's going on.
Definitely. I definitely could see that. To me though, as you mentioned with regards to the growth of the front porch homesteading group there, and I've seen it happen. I've seen it in a bunch of other homesteading groups that I'm a part of. I think the silver lining in this cloud, or one of the silver linings in this cloud, is that people are understanding the need to take control of producing their own food. And how long that sticks with people, I don't know, but I have to believe that it's going to stick with some people. It's not going to stick with everybody.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've been seeing it on just the regular media. I mean, I've heard on news stations and stuff. I've seen 2 or 3. I think I've seen 3 different stations have a segment on victory gardens, the new victory garden, and they're talking about growing food, in your front and backyards, or even if you live in an urban or suburban area. And to me, there's just nothing bad that can come from that. I love to hear people talking about it and a lot of people doing it. I think it's just great.
Absolutely. And, I've seen a few, if you want to call them, I hate to call them hardcore homesteaders, but, kind of, I don't even know what you would call them, but people complaining about these new people coming in and taking their seeds and taking their, what I'm like, I just want to shake those people. Like, this is a good thing. We've got people that have an interest in raising and growing their own food. How can this not be a good thing?
Yeah, I look at it like this. If they're really that hardcore homesteaders, then they should probably been saving their seeds anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, that's definitely a good point. Definitely good. And they probably, if they weren't saving seeds, they should have had their seed order back in when most of us in January.
Yeah, the shortages on things haven't been caused by people who were prepared, people who think ahead and are self-sufficient. The shortage has been caused by people who weren't prepared, and they went out and grabbed things last minute and emptied the shells on everything. So if you're a homesteader, I think most homesteaders we probably know are pretty prepared people. We keep things on hand. We keep we think ahead. We think even a year ahead on a lot of things. I mean, we try to keep a lot of food in the cows. We try to keep seeds put away for the next year. I mean, I always do, and I think most homesteaders do.
Absolutely. And to be forward with you, there were some things when I started looking at how prepared we were. All of a sudden there were some glaring weaknesses in my preparedness strategy that was very apparent to me. And I was like, oh my goodness, I never thought about that. Oh my goodness,
I think a lot of us are seeing the holes in our plans a little bit. I mean, this is definitely because we haven't really had, a big crisis, recently, and it's definitely bringing a lot of things to light. I mean, there's for sure we're seeing the things that maybe we didn't think about before. So it's even good for us, those of us who would say we're more prepared for something like this. I think it's great for us because it opens our eyes up to the real needs, not just that, what people like to think about. It's like you can have all the canned tomatoes in your cabinet you want, but what are you lacking? There's other things too, you might need.
Absolutely. And not only that, but, I had, and I think many people do, you sit down and, probably December, January, and you're kind of architecting your plan for your homestead for the next year. And, and not to say that what I had planned was bad, don't get me wrong, but it was very apparent to me that some of the things that I had planned were not needs. They were definitely on the want list. I had to pivot and, kind of say, okay, this year, in this time of uncertainty, if we cannot tie our spend directly to raising and growing food or providing our need, whether it's shelter, but really thinking about the bare necessities. What are your necessities? What do you need to survive? If my spend can't be tied directly to that, then I need to really think twice about it.
Yep, I agree.
And that's not to say that I haven't spent money on things other than that. I certainly have, but I thought twice about it. And some of the things that I had on my list as far as plans for the homestead, they're pushed out for a time to be determined.
Yeah, for me, it's even been more about not so much things, but even budgeting and money wise, because, you think, you don't think about being off work for a couple months. I mean, a lot of people are fortunate enough that their jobs, they can work from home, but there's a lot of people who don't have that option. If their jobs go down and in most places, unemployment and things like that don't pay you near enough if you're counting on that. And you may be in a situation where there's not enough cash to go around. So I think a lot of folks have opened up their eyes to the fact that they need to put more cash back, to pay their bills with for 2, 3, 4 more months, in case things happen. And I think that's just something, I think there was an era of people, decades ago that really thought that way, especially after the Depression. I think for the following few decades after that, a lot of people really focused on that. But I think in the last 30, 40 years, people have really gotten away from putting back cash for emergencies like that.
That's absolutely correct. And, a lot of people, and, the statistics show the number of people. I mean, the high percentage of people that live paycheck to paycheck, with less than $1,000 worth of savings. If they were to miss a paycheck, it would basically bankrupt them.
But even at that, is that enough? I mean, not a lot of people think about having 6 months put away for not for retirement, but for being out of work and, paying your bills. No, people don't really think like that in general. I mean, there are definitely some people who focus on that and think a lot about that. I mean, there's a whole, Dave Ramsey has spawned a whole, group of people that, really focus on that. But I would say most people don't think like that.
No, you're absolutely right. And, we have, as Americans, we've really gotten spoiled. I mean, there's no other way to put it than that. Where, we've lived lives where, even some of the things that we thought we needed, really were wants. In any other part of the world, we jokingly refer to our first world problems. But there's a lot of truth to that. And, so you're definitely right. I mean, I think people have lived very much in this consumeristic type lifestyle. And now you end up in a situation like this where all of a sudden, it becomes very apparent that maybe I don't need the next iPhone. Maybe I don't need the next game console or whatever it is. Maybe I don't need that. Right. What do I need? And that's where I think you see people pivoting towards, raising and growing food.
Yeah, I mean, I see it in my own life. I mean, I'm definitely noticing many things that, it's like I definitely need to be not be have a mind set towards just all the luxuries and be thinking about, what you need and making sure you have that long term before you ever think about those other things. I mean, it's definitely something that's affected me and I've thought a lot about. Yeah,
and I think, again, you look, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not glad that we're going through this situation as I feel for people who are out of work. I'm blessed right now where up to this point, my company is able to survive and I'm able to work from home. And I'm very thankful for that, but I don't take that for granted either. But in the midst of a situation like this, again, I'm trying to be overly optimistic here, but you look for kind of, again, those silver linings in the cloud. Hope is that this will serve as a bit of a wake-up call to people to, again, to think a little bit more about what's really important. What do we really need, whether it's, time with your family, whether it's, taking control of your food supply. But I think those are some of the silver linings in the cloud that can be there. And I think we're starting to see that. At least I'm seeing that in some of the the homestead groups and so forth. And
yeah, no doubt there's going to be some good come out of it. I mean, there's plenty of bad coming out of it, but no doubt there's going to be some good. It's just like what we talked about earlier. You get your money box broken into, and the next thing you know, people come out of the woodwork and they start doing the right thing and helping people, and you see the good come out of something like that. And not that it was a good thing to happen, initially, but good comes out of it. And this is the same way. It's not a good thing. Plenty bad's going to come from it, but yeah, I have no doubts we're going to see some good come from it for sure.
Yeah. And I think the other thing for me, and this is what has really been driving me even more so lately with the podcast than before, is, okay, now we've got all these people that are coming into this lifestyle that have absolutely no idea with regards to how to take care of a chick, how to plant a garden, how to start, so how can I help people on that journey? Because they're trying to become almost overnight, they're trying to get up to speed as far as being, self-sufficient, self-reliant, and all of those kinds of things. And so how can I help people on that journey? Because my goal, and again, it's going to stick with some people. It's not going to stick with other people. But what I don't want to have happen is people throw their hands up and leave defeated because I had an opportunity to help them and I didn't help them.
Yeah, let's transition to that for a minute. I mean, you started a podcast a few months ago, and you're talking about right now in this crisis, it's a good help for people, but that wasn't going on when you started the podcast. Why did you actually start the podcast? I mean, what was your motivation to go down that path?
My motivation, I think, was still the same, in that I don't claim to be an expert in anything. And if you listen to my podcast, probably at least once an episode, I will remind people of that. But I know a little bit about a lot of things, and I'm somebody who has an insatiable curiosity. I'm always wanting to learn new things and try new things and experiment with new things. And so my goal has always been to try to help people on the journey towards self-sufficiency, self-reliance, and sustainability. Those are the kind of the 3 S's that I talk about all the time. And I think it's very important to focus on the idea that it's a journey. It's not a destination. And I think some people kind of get in their heads that someday they're going to reach, full on sustainability, full on self-reliance, full on, and that's, it's just not going to happen.
Well, there may be some out there, but I've never met one.
Exactly. And in fact, I'm, going back to Little House on the Prairie, I'm a 43-year-old guy, and I love those books. I'm reading through them again right now. And I'm reading the Little House on the Prairie book, and Pa has to go to Independence to get cornmeal and tobacco and I don't know, nails, and he brings back the glass and whatnot. And as I was reading that, I'm thinking, to a lot of people, for whatever reason, Ma and Pa Ingalls are kind of like the stereotypical, and it's bizarre because those books are about something that took place almost 150 years ago. But, people still have that as the ideal as far as what a homesteader should be. And even Ma and Pa Ingalls were never fully self-sufficient. They were never fully self-reliant. They still had to go buy things from the store. So to have this mentality that somehow we're going to achieve that, I think is foolish. But on the other hand, I think that we need to keep working towards that goal, like that.
Yeah, striving for it can be pretty satisfying.
Exactly.
Sure.
So can I make steps so that I am less reliant on a commercial food supply that has proven to be maybe a little less sturdy than what we thought it was. Can I take control of my food supply in such a way that it's a sustainable system where I've got a rooster and some hens and I'm hatching out chicks and, push comes to shove, I've got theoretically a continuous supply of meat.
Right.
So, that for me, the goal of the podcast has really been to encourage people in that pursuit. And I think the piece to it as well is this is something that I know is very near and dear to your heart. And that is really that I believe anybody can do this. I don't think, a lot of people think they need, when they think of homesteading, they think of the 5, the 10, the 15, the 20 acres of land in the country. They think of it as a place. And then on that land, you have to do all of these things. You've got to have a family milk cow. You've got to have chickens. You've got to have a garden. You've got to can, there's all of these things that you have to do in this place. And that's what makes you a homesteader. But I don't think that's what it's about at all. To me, it's like,
absolutely,
it's a lifestyle, and it's a mentality of how can I work towards self-sufficiency, self-reliance, and sustainability. And that may mean that I'm planting in a pot on my patio in New York City, that overlooks Central Park. I'm planting lettuce and maybe some tomatoes, and And yeah, it's not as much as what somebody might be able to do in upstate New York, but it's definitely better, and it's going to taste better than what you could even buy at a farmer's market. So,
yep. Oh, I agree.
And then you kind of work your way out of that to, the people that live in suburbia, even people that live in HOAs. They can homestead too. They're going to have to get creative. Oh, they do it.
Got to do it at night when nobody's looking. No, I'm just kidding. There's definitely things they can do. I mean, you can set out, pots on a back patio or grow things in windowsills. And, I've seen people that couldn't do anything outside, but they could grow sprouts on a windowsill inside, and eat that on a salad. I mean, something, or they just learn to cook from scratch and they buy the products they need to cook from scratch. And, and that's all they can do, but it's something, it's something more than I would say the average person does these days.
Absolutely. I mean, it could be that they go to the farmer's market and they buy, at the end of the day, and they buy up all of the produce that the farmers couldn't sell, and they bring it home and they can, or they mint, or they, it could be that they figure out creative ways to plant edibles in their landscaping, so maybe they're planting some, blue, what do they call it? The bright light Swiss chard. It's a beautiful plant. Yeah. They can plant that in their front yard and nobody would ever know.
See, after munching on it like a goat, and they're thinking, what is that crazy dude doing out there?
And the other piece to it, I read an article on one of the homesteading sites of a guy who lived in an HOA. He couldn't have chickens. So what he did is he went and he bought a huge aquarium, and he put it in the middle of his living room. Now, I don't think my wife is pretty easygoing. I'm not sure she would buy into this, but this is what the guy did. He bought this huge aquarium, he put it in the middle of his living room, and he started raising quail. So now he's got meat, he's got eggs, So sometimes it's just a matter of just thinking outside the box. I read another article of somebody who was raising rabbits in cages on their back porch, and they were in an HOA.
Yeah, I've seen it many times.
There's a lot of things that you can do. Is it optimal? No. But you're never going to have a perfect situation anyhow. I mean, my situation here isn't perfect. Right. I mean, you look at the Joel Salatins who have these, large pastures, and they're doing the pasture, they're bringing the cows through, and then they're bringing the chickens through, or maybe it's the other way. I think it's the cows through and then the chickens through. I would love to do a system like that. I can't. Now, does that mean that I can't raise meat birds? No. I just got to get creative. I got to do it a different way. Mm-hmm. So, again, people, if they're looking for the perfect situation, they're never going to find it. And so I really enjoy Jason Smith over at Cog Hill Farm. One of the things he always says, and I repeat it very often, is do the best you can with what you got. You're never going to have a perfect situation. And that may mean that instead of feeding organic feed, you have to feed conventional feed. It is what it is. Do the best you can with what you got.
Yep. Yeah, we get wrapped up. We let what we end up making our minds to be perfect, and we let that ruin what is a really good thing sometimes, because we think if it can't be the absolute perfect situation, we just ain't going to do it. And so often I think that keeps people from doing their best, and their best would be way better than where they're at now. So it's like, just do the best you can and don't worry about perfect, because it's probably not going to be achievable anyway. And if it is, someday, you do the best you can right now. Because, there was things I started doing. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. When I first started doing it, I just did the best I could, and I got better and better and better. And maybe it still isn't perfect, but it's way better than it was when I first started doing it. So you just start where you're at, do what you can where you're at right now, and, work it out and learn and grow. And, before you know it, you're definitely a little bit more self-sufficient than you were the day before.
That's exactly it. And the other piece to it as well is sometimes I think you have people who jump in and they want to be, and I don't think it's just homesteading. I think it's any aspect of life where people jump in and they want to be where somebody who's been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years is. They want to be there today. They don't understand that person has learned so much through trial and error. And, their first garden wasn't perfect. They lost chicks. They had chickens die. They had, they've made mistakes along the way. And that's how they've gotten to where they're at. And so, if you think you're going to jump in, and especially people that are brand new to this and think that, I'm going to plant tomatoes this year and I'm going to have a bumper crop, and then you don't, and you think you're a failure. No, okay, you didn't have a bumper crop, so learn from it. Okay, what did you do wrong, or was it a weather thing, or reach out to people and say, okay, how can I do it better next year?
Yeah, a good case of blight will solve them of that theory, won't it? Having a bumper crop.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just I'm going to tell on myself here a little bit. The last 3 years, probably the easiest vegetable of all to grow, I would say for most people, is zucchini, right? They jokingly say that in Vermont, the only time people lock their doors is during zucchini season. In fact, I remember the first garden I ever had, I was relatively ignorant. And when I say ignorant, I'm saying that in a derogatory way, just you don't know what you don't know. And so I bought zucchini transplants at the store, not realizing that you could just stick seeds in the ground and zucchini would grow. So I bought a 6-pack of zucchini, and I planted every one of them because I'm cheap like that. If I'm going to buy 6 of them, I'm going to plant 6 of them. And my grandfather looked at me and said, Brian, I don't think you want to do that. Papa, if I bought 6 zucchini plants, I'm going to plant 6 zucchini. It wasn't very long, and I was pulling up zucchini plants because anybody that has grown zucchini knows that zucchini can be rather prolific. Now, I say all of that to say this. In the last 2 years, I think I've been able to successfully grow 1 or 2 zucchini. I don't know what it is, but I don't know if it's been blossom end rot, but it is just I have struggled to grow zucchini. And I have been directly gardening now since 2007. I've grown up around it my entire life. And, I'll own it. It's been a struggle to grow zucchini. So all of that to say that none of us have perfect gardens. From year to year, you never know. Another thing I've struggled with the last couple of years have been cucumbers. I have had those blasted striped cucumber beetles.
Yep. Got those last year for the first time.
And it's like, cucumbers, how hard is that? And yet it's been a struggle. So again, I say that to say to people that are new to this, that even people who are experienced, and again, I don't claim to be an expert, but I've been doing this a while, we all have our struggles. So if this is your first year gardening and things don't go according to your plan, don't flip out. Don't trip out. It's all good. Find a mentor in your area, find a mentor online. And there are plenty of people that are going to be willing to help you out. And if you struggle to find people, when you're on Facebook, come on over to the front porch, the Homestead front porch, and we'll help you out. Let's do it.
Absolutely. Well, you've been dropping some great advice on us, man. I really appreciate you, getting out there and just being open with us about your own struggles and encouraging folks. And, I think you just dropped some really good inspiration on us today, man. I think it's great. And I think that, in this time, people need podcasts like this and like yours and to learn and grow and do a little bit more and pursue that self-sufficiency. So I'm glad you're out there doing it. I really am. I'm glad you're out there sharing your journey and, trying to encourage people to do this thing.
Well, I appreciate it. It's something that for me, I absolutely love doing it. To a certain extent, I almost feel driven to do it. And that maybe is a bit over dramatic. It's something that my son kind of gets a little bit irritated with me because I eat, sleep, and drink homesteading. I listen to Homestead Podcast. I watch homesteading videos. I'm always thinking about homesteading. I'm reading homesteading books. It's something that just, I don't know, to a certain extent, maybe almost even in an unhealthy way, it consumes me. But I have this desire to, whatever little bit I can do to help people, I want to do that. Because I do feel a sense to whom much is given, much is required. And so if I can help other people on this journey towards self-sufficiency, self-reliance, and sustainability, then why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah. Sounds like you and I have an awful lot in common.
Absolutely. In fact, before I jumped on here with you, I was kind of going over your site again and just kind of doing a little refreshing. And it was like, just based on your bio, we can cut out the grandfather part because I'm not quite there yet. But other than that, you could basically put my picture there, and I think it would pretty much describe me. Now, the other thing as well is I'm not a cancer survivor, and I think that's really what led you, from my understanding, it's kind of what led you into this. That was kind of the catalyst for you. Is that?
I grew up with a love for it, much like you did. But it was a thing that said, get off your butt and get started no matter where you're at. Cause, I always was thinking, like you said earlier, looking for that 5 to 20 acres, thinking that's what it was going to take. And then the cancer just kind of kicked me in the butt and said, no, you need to make do with what you got and get out there and do it. And then I figured out, I can. You really can do it.
And once you do that, then I think, obviously, surviving cancer is an inspiration to people anyhow, but then to show people that you can do this on small acreage. You don't have to have the 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 acres of land. I think that's also something that's very inspirational to people. I'm very blessed to have 2 acres here. And there are times when I wish it were more. I think, there's probably a sense to where many of us do. And then on the other hand, I look at people that have a lot of acreage, and they spend so much time mowing lawn that they can't get anything else done. So I guess it's be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, I think all the time, I wish I had 10 acres or something, but then I often think about how I can barely get everything done on my little piece of property that I have to do.
Exactly. And it seems like,
I don't know what I'd do if I had that kind of property. I don't know how I keep up.
Yeah, and it's so easy to get, sucked in. The little bit that we do, and we do a lot, but definitely, we don't have the cows, and we don't have the humongous gardens, row after row after row, and market gardening and all that kind of stuff. It definitely keeps me busy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Brian, I'm going to let you go, and I do really appreciate you coming on here and just sharing your story with us, your journey and what led you down this path and, everything you're doing. And I'm going to encourage folks to really run over and check out your podcast and you subscribe to it and listen to it and grow from it, because I think you got a lot of stuff to share with people, and especially folks that are really new to this game. I think that, I know there's plenty of them. We've been talking about that. There's a lot of people just getting started, and I think what you're offering is really good for them, and it's just really going to help people out in their pursuits of everything. You're doing things that I'm not doing. Of course, I'm doing some things you're not doing. Both of our podcasts can benefit a lot of people, and I think that you got a lot to offer. So I'm going to encourage people to head over and check you out. And I do thank you for coming on here and sharing everything with us. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. It has been an absolute privilege and an honor. And, I don't know about you, but I could talk and blather on about this for a long, long time. So anyhow, I really appreciate you.
Yeah, I definitely could too. I know people probably couldn't listen to us as long as we talk about it. So I think we'll probably shut it off.
Absolutely. Good call.
Well, I know you really enjoyed that, and I will have all of Brian's links in the show notes. You can find his podcast and his Instagram account and things like that in the show notes, and I'll also have a link to the membership if you're interested in following me or joining me on Patreon and getting some of those perks of being a supporter of the podcast. So all that'll be in the show notes, and I thank you, Brian, again for coming on. It was great having you, and you just got a lot of good information there for a lot of folks. So thanks again for that. And until next time, folks, happy homesteading and God bless. I hope you enjoyed this episode. To learn more or find more episodes, just head on over to HaroldThornbrough.com. Thanks for listening.